He stared at the documents on the heavy oak desk, the words cancellation of deed blurred by the stinging behind his eyes. The lawyer's office smelled of old paper and dust, a scent that felt like a burial. A single call to Maribel. That's all it would take. His thumb hovered over the glowing screen of his phone. She had no idea. She thought her dream was a year away from being real. She thought the land was her destiny, her future, but the truth was, it was only a phone call away from becoming nothing but another broken promise. My hand shook. I wasn't just destroying her dream. I was tearing apart the last thing our father had given us, and I knew with a sick certainty that I would have to live with the silence that came after. The silence of a family finally, completely gone. Before I begin this story, can you tell me where in the world you're listening to from? The land came with a curse, though nobody ever said it out loud. It was a 50-acre patch of nothing but red clay and stubborn pine trees, but it was our father's last gift. When he died, he left everything to my sister, Maribel, and me, and with it he left the unspoken demand that we never sell it. Maribel had always been the one with the big plans. She had folders filled with sketches, blueprints for a little farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a swing, a place she swore she'd build herself one day. I always believed her. I was the one who worked the night shift at the feed store, the one who sold my truck, the one who paid off the last of our father's medical debts and the last of the property taxes. I did it all without a word, because that land wasn't just 50 acres to her. It was a promise. It was our father, still with us. I was just the quiet boy who made sure that dreams stayed alive. Maribel and I weren't like other siblings. We were more like two halves of a whole. She was the sunlight, full of bright ideas and a restless energy that made her bounce from one thing to the next, never quite finishing anything. I was the dirt she planted her ideas in, the quiet, steady ground that held her in place. Our father's death had hit her harder, in a way. He was the one who always saw her big, unachievable dreams as real, who'd sketch out her plans on old napkins at the dinner table. After he was gone, she leaned on me, and I held her up. She'd call me, not to ask how I was, but to tell me about a new type of siding she'd seen or a deal she'd found on windows. It never occurred to her that I was working myself to the bone just to keep a roof over my head and hers. All she saw was the land, and the promise of a future on it. She never saw the sacrifices I made just to keep it out of foreclosure. The truth was, I hadn't planned on going home for Christmas. It was just a regular weeknight when I got the call, the kind where the moon was high and the gas station parking lot was empty. I was standing by the pump, the nozzle in my hand, when my phone rang. I saw Maribel's name flash on the screen and I smiled, already picturing her bubbly voice telling me some new grand idea. "Hey," I said, my voice thick with exhaustion. She didn't say hey back, she just started talking. Her voice a rapid-fire string of thoughts about some guy she met, some new plans she had for her real estate business. "It's been a crazy year," she said. "I'm not even putting up a tree." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yeah, I know how that goes." I waited, thinking she'd ask me about my plans. My thumb was already on the button to buy a bus ticket. I was going to surprise her. I was going to go home, even though I knew it would be a struggle just to afford the gas. But she didn't ask. Instead, she just kept talking, her voice full of a brittle kind of excitement. She was so wrapped up in her own life, so oblivious to the cold silence on the other end of the line. I stood there, the pump still in my hand, and let her talk. My heart felt like it was sinking into my gut. I wanted to scream, to ask her if she even cared, but the words wouldn't come out. I just listened to her, and with every word she said, another piece of me broke. She was so excited about the new year, about her plans for the land, that she didn't even notice I was still there. She never asked how I was, or if I had plans for the holidays. She just kept talking, and then a pause, as if she had just noticed I was still on the line. "Oh, by the way," she said, her voice dropping a little, "don't even bother coming up for Christmas this year. I'm going to be out of town anyway. I wasn't expecting you." The line went dead, but her words still echoed in my ears. "I wasn't expecting you." I stood there, the gas pump a dead weight in my hand, and I felt the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. All the years of my quiet sacrifice, all the money I'd spent, all the dreams I'd put on hold for her, and she wasn't even expecting me. She didn't even care. The land, it was all she had ever cared about. It wasn't a promise to her. It was a commodity, something to be used and discarded when she no longer needed it. My hands were shaking now, not from the cold but from the searing rage that was beginning to boil inside me. She was so close to getting what she wanted, but what she didn't know was that I had another plan. I wasn't just going to stand there and let her take it all. I was going to find a way to get it back, even if it meant destroying everything we had, even if it meant breaking our family apart forever. The first thing I did was drive to the old house, the one Maribel and I grew up in. It had been sold to a new family a few months ago, and I hadn't been back since, but that night I had to see it. I had to see the place where our promises were made and broken. I parked my car across the street, the engine still running, and just stared. The porch light was on, a warm golden glow that made the house look so inviting, so unlike the cold feeling in my own gut. I sat there for hours, the memories of our childhood swirling in my head like a tornado. I remembered our father, the way he would read us stories on the front porch, the way he would tell us that we were the only two people who mattered in his world. He had said that we would always have each other, no matter what. He had said that the land was our future, a legacy that we would share. But his words felt hollow now. They felt like a lie. I had always thought I knew everything about our family. I was the quiet one, the one who listened, the one who paid attention to the details. But I was wrong. I drove from the house to the storage unit. It was a cramped, musty place, filled with the remnants of our old life. I had rented it after the funeral, unable to part with our father's things. I had just packed everything away, not even daring to look at it. But now, I had to. I unlocked the metal door and stepped inside, the cold air hitting me like a slap. I had to find something that would make sense of all of this. I dug through old boxes, pushing past dusty photo albums and stacks of old clothes. My fingers brushed against a small metal box. I hadn't seen it since our father passed. It was a small, ornate thing with a tarnished brass latch. I fumbled with it, my heart pounding in my chest. I opened it and found a stack of letters, tied together with a faded ribbon. The letters were from our father to his brother, Jareth, a brother I had never even known existed. The letters were filled with a kind of raw, desperate love that I had never heard in my father's voice. He wrote about a secret debt, a crippling debt that had been a weight on his shoulders for years. He wrote about how he had to find a way to pay it, or he would lose everything. And then I saw it, the last letter dated just a few months before he died. It was short and the words were scrawled as if he had been too tired to write them. He had made a deal with a land developer. He had promised to sell them the land, our family's legacy, to pay off his brother's debts. My blood ran cold. The land wasn't a promise, it was a means to an end. It wasn't a legacy, it was a secret, a debt that had been passed down to us. I looked at the letter, my hands trembling. Maribel had no idea. She thought she was building a dream, but she was building a house on a lie. The final letter was from a law firm, a few months after our father's death. It detailed the terms of the land deal, and the name of the developer, a corporation that specialized in high-end luxury condos. The company was called Golden Vista Properties. I looked at the letter, and a cold, hard rage settled in my gut. My father had lied to us. He had made a deal with a developer to sell our land and had never told us. He had left us a lie, and Maribel was about to build her life on it. She didn't know it was a secret, a trap. The land wasn't a legacy of our love. It was a secret he had kept from us, and from the world, a secret that would have been buried with him. I felt the betrayal hit me again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just Maribel, it was our father too. I had to do something. I had to stop her. I sat in the lawyer's office, the letter from Golden Vista Properties in my hand. It was a cold, clinical document, but it felt like a weapon. The lawyer, Oswin, was a kind, quiet man with a tired face. He listened to me and he didn't interrupt, he just listened. He had known my father had handled some of his other affairs. He had told me that he would do anything he could to help. I told him about the letters, about the debt, about the land deal. He didn't seem surprised. He just nodded and said he had his suspicions. He had helped me with the deed, had helped me get the title transferred into both our names. I had done it to make sure the land was safe, to make sure Maribel could build her dream. But now, I knew I had to do something else. I had to use the one weapon I had left. The deed, the one thing that gave me the power to stop her. The deed to the land was sitting on the table, a thin piece of paper that held our family's future in its hands. I looked at it and I felt the weight of it all. The weight of my father's lies, the weight of Maribel's dreams, and the weight of my own silent sacrifice. I looked at Oswin and I knew what I had to do. I had to cancel the deed. I had to destroy her dream before it destroyed her. I had to tear up the contract and tell her the truth. I had to make her see that the land was a lie. I had to make her see that the only thing that mattered was us. I took the deed in my hand and I walked out of the office, the sun setting behind me, and I felt the cold air hit my face. I looked at my phone and I knew what I had to do. I had to call her and tell her the truth. I had to tell her that I wasn't coming home for Christmas. And I had to tell her why. I stared at her on the video call, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. The Christmas lights twinkled in the background, a stark contrast to the darkness in her eyes. "You did what?" she yelled, her voice breaking. "You cancelled the land deal. You cancelled my dream." I just sat there, my hands trembling. "Maribel," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The land, it's not what you think it is." She didn't let me finish. She just screamed at me, her voice a torrent of accusations and anger. She called me a traitor. She called me a coward. She called me a monster. I just sat there listening to her, the words hitting me like 1,000 tiny needles. She didn't know. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know that I was just trying to protect her. I was just trying to save her from our father's last secret, from his last lie. But she didn't want to hear it. She just wanted her dream. She just wanted the lie. She finally ran out of words, her chest heaving, her eyes filled with tears. The silence that followed was deafening. I took a deep breath. "Maribel," I said, my voice low and steady. "I found a letter from Dad. He sold the land. He sold it to pay off a debt. He was going to sell it to Golden Vista. They're going to build a luxury condo on it." I watched her face and I saw the disbelief turn into something else. Something raw and ugly. She just shook her head. "No," she whispered. "That's a lie. He would never." I held up the letter, the paper shaking in my hand. "It's true," I said. "He was going to sell it. He was going to use the money to pay off the debt." I told her about the debt, about our father's silent struggle, about the brother we never knew about. I told her of everything. I expected her to fight me. I expected her to argue, but she didn't. She just sat there, her eyes wide with shock. And then she started to cry. Not angry tears, not raging tears, but quiet, heartbroken sobs. And she told me a secret of her own, a secret that had been a weight on her shoulders for years. She told me that she had known about the debt. She had known about the brother. She had known that our father was going to sell the land, and she had known that he had left it to us as a way of getting rid of it, of passing his last secret on to us. She told me that she had spent the last year working with the developer, trying to find a way to save the land. She had been trying to find a way to buy it back from them. She had been working so hard, so desperately to keep the dream alive. She said she had been so ashamed, so afraid that she hadn't told me. She had just wanted to do it all herself. She told me that the reason she had told me not to come home for Christmas was because she had been planning to surprise me. She had been planning on giving me the deed to the land, paid in full. She had been planning to tell me that she had saved our father's legacy, that she had fixed his last mistake. She had been so consumed by the need to fix his lie that she had forgotten about me. She had forgotten that I was her brother. She had forgotten that I was there for her. She had been so focused on the land, on the lie, that she had forgotten about the one thing that mattered. Our family. Her words hit me like a physical blow. The anger, the rage, the betrayal, it all melted away, leaving me with a cold, hollow feeling in my gut. I had destroyed her dream. I had torn her life apart, all because of a misunderstanding, all because of a lie, all because of my own pride. The call ended with a silence that felt heavier than 1,000 words. I sat there in the dark, the phone in my hand, and I realized the truth. We had both been trying to save our family. We had both been trying to honor our father. But we had been doing it on our own. We had been doing it in the dark, and we had almost destroyed everything. I knew what I had to do. The next morning I drove to her house, the sun rising over the horizon. I didn't knock. I just walked in. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in her hand, her eyes red and puffy. She looked at me and I saw the pain in her eyes. I didn't say a word. I just walked over to her and I put the deed on the table, the one I had cancelled. She looked at me and her eyes filled with tears. She looked at the paper and then she looked at me. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why did you do this?" I just shook my head. "I didn't know," I said. "I just wanted to save you. I just wanted to save us." She looked at me and then she reached out her hand and she took mine, and we just sat there in the cold, quiet kitchen, holding hands. We didn't talk, we didn't need to, we just sat there, two people who had almost destroyed each other, but who had found a way back. We found our way back to each other, and we knew with a certainty that was heavier than any deed, that the land didn't matter, the secret didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was us. We would have to start over, we would have to face the developer. We would have to figure out a way to get the land back. We would have to do it all over again, but this time we would do it together.